Hi everyone, today we're going to go over equations and inequalities. This should be a quick review, but we're just going to talk about the difference between the two and how to identify them and what they kind of mean. So our goals are to understand the difference between equations and inequalities and to be able to identify greater than and less than symbols. First off, we're going to start with equations. And an equation, as we should all be at least somewhat familiar with, and we should all be familiar with the equal sign, which tells us that one side of our statement is equal to the other one. It doesn't matter what's on either of those sides, as long as we have an equal sign, then that's telling us that whatever junk is on the left has to have the same value as whatever is on the right. When we see two expressions separated by an equal sign, we call it an equation. And usually equations have a limited number of answers. So because we have to have it equal to each other, we're going to have a limited number of answers. There's a couple of exceptions, but not enough to talk about right now. So we're going to give you an example of an equation really quickly. So right here we have 3x plus 5 is equal to 8. Now here to solve this, which we're not going to talk about how to solve it, but if you're to solve it, you would find out that x has to equal 1. So on our beautiful number line that we have here, we're going to put a closed circle. A closed circle means that it includes that number. And you notice that we only put on the 1 because it only has one answer, which is that x has to equal 1. To prove this, 3 times 1 is 3, plus 5 is 8. 8 is equal to 8, and so we're happy with it. Next, we're going to talk about inequalities. And to talk about inequalities, we first have to go over the less than sign, which is when the alligator is pointing to the right, and that tells us that the left side is smaller than the right side. The greater than sign is the opposite. It's pointing to the left, and it tells us that the left side is bigger than the right side. Since when we see this in our sentence, our math sentence is separated by this sign, it tells us that one of these things is unequal to the other, and because of that inequality, we call it an inequality. And they generally will have more answers than you would find in an equation. Let's give an example. We're going to pull back our statement that we had before. Only in this case, what we're going to find out is x has to be less than 1. So we're going to draw ourselves a circle, and it's going to be an open circle because that means that it doesn't include 1. If you're to plug that in, 3 times 1 is 3, plus 5 is 8. 8 is not less than 8, so if we put in anything lower than that, we know it's okay. If we put in 0, 3 times 0 is 0, plus 5 is 5, so 5 is less than 8, and that's true. And then we're just going to shade in everything below that. So what that means is that everything past that is going to be a solution for this. If we put a negative 1, then we're going to have 3 times negative 1, which is negative 3, plus 5, which is 2. 2 is still going to be less than 8. We can't go above the 1 because then we're going to be greater than 8. So for this one where we had the less than, we had to make sure that this side of the statement is less than our 8. Same equation, or same inequality, only we're flipping the sign, so now it's 3x plus 5 is greater than 8, which means that x has to be greater than 1. We're going to put our open circle there, saying that it's not including 1, and then we're going to test this. So if we were to put in a 2, 3 times 2 is 6, 6 plus 5 is 11, 11 is greater than 8, and we can keep going this way. Now the really cool thing about this is, while we can't have 1, we can have 1.000001, because that will be just slightly greater than 8, and that still counts. And so this is why we can have more than one answer, and this is why they generally have a large number, even an infinite number of solutions.